Are you ready to become a change maker? Our 48-week postgraduate program in public policy or the PGP may be just the thing for you. This hybrid program is designed to give you both the theoretical foundation and hands-on experience needed to excel in policy making. With a mix of expert-led webinars, in-person workshops, and policy simulation exercises, you'll gain real-world skills along with personalized mentorship. Through our policy programs, we connect good people to good ideas and good networks. Apply now at the link in the description to make an impact.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of All Things Policy. I'm Malti Renati, and I head the policy school at the Takshashila Institution. And today I have as my guest Vaidehi Vinayak Vaidya. She's the founder and managing director of Women in Sport India, which essentially looks at empowering women through sports and fitness. The topic that we'll be discussing today is women leadership in sports. And that's the reason I called upon Vaidehi, because she is an athlete herself and has actually done her MBA in football industries from the University of Liverpool. She's also a TEDx speaker and the first official FIFA fan forum member. Vaidehi has also set up her own organization, the one I just mentioned, called Women in Sport India, which aims to encourage more women to enter the world of sport, both on and off the field. So welcome, Vaidehi. It's a pleasure having you here.
Thank you so much, Malti. It is obviously a great pleasure to be here. And we are today actually discussing one of my favorite topics. So I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to the discussion. I think a lot can come from this, for sure.
Yeah, thanks, Vaidehi. So I think to begin with, it's very interesting. I would like to just hear from you your own journey. From an athlete, I believe you used to play football before, and then from that you took on an academic specialization related to the sport that you've played. And now you've started your own company, which I think is back in 2020, I believe
Yes.
is when you, right, Women in Sport first started. So could you please tell me your journey and what got you here?
Yeah, sure. So I'm an engineer by degree, but one of the things that I realized is I'm actually not an engineer by heart. One of the things that I have constantly done in my entire life is to play. I love playing. I love going out. I'm very competitive also, which is something that I've loved every bit of it. I played football. Before that, I played taekwondo, and I kept on experimenting with different sports. I've played cricket for a little bit. I've tried my hat at badminton. None of it professionally, because being a professional athlete when I was playing sport was not one of the things that I was thinking about, or people around me were even thinking about. But now that you see a lot of women going ahead, and not just women, men and women both going ahead and pursuing sports as a professional career, I think that has changed over the past only few years, probably. But when I was growing up, I don't think I even thought about being a professional athlete. I don't think that was a career choice at all at that point of time. But, I just loved to play. So I kept on playing, and at the end of my engineering years, I realized that that's something that I want to do my career in. So sports was a natural choice. I believe in organic transitioning of in life in general. So when I graduated engineering, sports felt like the most natural thing to pursue from a career perspective. And I was searching for a course which would allow me to do exactly that. And I came across a course called Football Industries MBA, which was, conducted, and it still is conducted by University of Liverpool. I think it was one of the two courses available on football. I think it still is one of the few courses that are specifically on football industry.
And I suppose in India, we didn't have any options back then, right?
Not at all. The Indian options are very recent. way after I graduated my course is when Indian sports education started really. So the only option for me to go was to go abroad, UK, because it's an English speaking country and motherland of football. Or everything, all things football. It became again the most natural choice, and I they needed me to have 2 years of experience before I could pursue that course. So I got 2 years of experience in the electrical field itself, and then applied for the course, and I got in, and I was the first Indian woman to actually apply for the course, and that's when my sport journey actually started. And when I look back 10, 12 years, where I was and where I am today, I think it's changed a lot. My focus has changed a lot, naturally so, because sports in India is just started evolving, and everybody who started their sport journey 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 15 years ago are evolving with this evolution of sports industry in India. So it's very interesting to see where we are all going, because none of us actually know. We are not a saturated market. We are not a mature market. We are at a very nascent stage where we have probably just started crawling. So it's really an interesting journey towards growth of sports industry in India. And beyond that, it'll be very interesting to see even growth of women's sports in India, because again, it's a blank slate. More so than men's sports, women's sport is completely a blank slate, and it is what we make of it. So the responsibility lies on these early pioneers to kind of shape it in a way that will benefit long-term growth of women's sports. So I'm really happy to be where I am today in the sports ecosystem of India. Truly, really.
No, that's great. The first Indian in the course that you mentioned, and now I guess women in sport too, and from the leadership and the focus on leadership, I think your organization also is one of the first. So congratulations on that. I think there's always a first step that we all need to take, right? And then from there we kind of pivot and navigate. For our listeners, what we'll do is that we'll just from Vaide's experience, right, we're going to explore just looking at quickly at the government, what the government is doing, the sarkar as we call it. So we look at the sarkar, the samaj, and then the bazaar in that order, and see what the different areas are with respect to leadership for women in sport. Okay, so that's how we will navigate through this podcast. So the first one is more on the government, the policies, the institutional support for women in sport, right? So we know that our Indian government has introduced various schemes and policies to promote women in sport. Government initiatives like Khelo India, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, and the Target Olympic Podium Scheme, better known as TOPS, all these have contributed quite significantly over the last few years, especially to the increasing female participation in sports. Right? We also have Asmita, ASMITA, and this is an initiative, again, aimed to promote sports among women by providing a platform for emerging talent. So these things, schemes come and go, and we, however, have seen that leadership pathways remain limited. And this, again, is due to systemic challenges such as underrepresentation in sports federations. And we'll come to that a little later about the NSFs, but also the lack of structured mentorship programs, right? Vaidhi, how has the government policies evolved to support women in sports leadership roles, and what kind of gaps still exist, in your opinion?
Government, honestly, in the last few years, I see a lot of things happening from a government side on a participation level of women's sports. There is a lot of encouragement, and like you mentioned, there are initiatives like Halo India, which target the young population of men, women, both, which is something that we need. If you want to create Olympians, if you want to create medalists, we need that pool of young players to be encouraged, to participate at a school level, at a collegiate level. Halo India initiatives, they are for schools and colleges both. It's not just schools, but we see that happening at a large level, and the way they are hosted in different locations of the country to encourage, sport participation in various different pockets of the country. I think that's very important. Otherwise, we focus a lot more on one region because of the infrastructure and other facilities, but then the other regions remain untouched and ignored. So I think shifting these initiatives from a city to city, I think that helps at a participation level. But at a leadership level, I think we need to create pathways to get women, and I will add the right kind of women, the rightly skilled women, the talented women in the right positions to make the right decisions. One of the things that very recently the government has done is National Sports Governance Bill, which for the first time, I think, as far as I remember, it was open for comments. The policy bill that they brought out was open for comments, and a lot of sports stakeholders actually did comment on it. And I saw that the sports department actually brought these stakeholders in person in Delhi to discuss about how the bill should be developed. And I know quite a few people who actually were able to comment on it. And I know for a fact that all of them are extremely talented people. So their comments for a fact will be right for the development of sports in general, the policies related to sports. One of the things that government has made mandatory within that bill is any government body, any federal body, whether it's district, state, or national, needs to have 30% representation of women on their committees.
Yeah, and I think Sports Minister, right, Manshuk Mandavia also reiterated that recently again.
Yeah. And I think it's very important addition of the clause which makes it mandatory for federations to have that 30% representation. If they don't have it, that's not going to work. Right. I think it's very important policy decision that they have included. Now, one of the challenges could be of this is to have any woman just to fill the quota.
Force fit, yes.
Correct. It is now our responsibility as sports stakeholders to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Right.
Correct. So policy is there. What is missing is to how to do it, how to get the right women in the right positions. That's something that Women in Sport India is actually working on. So we are working for the past few months, we are working on something called Equity Toolkit, which fills this how. How do you do it? Okay, fine, 30% representation of women at a government level or governance level is required, but who fits the criteria, what the criteria should be, how can we get these women to represent at a committee level or a board level,
Right.
So that's something that we have been working on. We are developing a set of recommendations and methodology. And it's not just for the government, it's not just for the federations, it's for all stakeholders.
Yes.
Currently, of course, currently the bill, of course, addresses the government stakeholders, federal bodies. But I think it's applicable to any and all stakeholders in India, whether it's private, whether it's public-private, whether it's government, startups. Everybody should think of it as a directive to make sure that there are enough women in their decision-making committees. Because a lot of research now says that having that balanced representation is not just for the human right. It actually has implementations from a strategic perspective, from a growth perspective, from profit perspective. So having women has economic benefits.
True, very true.
And every stakeholder should think about it. Having female leadership in sports is extremely important from a growth perspective and benefit perspective.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, Vaidhi, I want you to go into details of what it is that women in sport is kind of putting together as guidelines, for want of a better word. But before that, just for our listeners, I just want to kind of tell them what NSF is, because some of them might not be aware. So, what we were speaking about, the National Sports Federations, this is a governing body that promotes and manages sports in India or in a country. In India, it's called NSFs. So essentially, this is a non-governmental, I repeat, it's a non-governmental autonomous body. Each sport needs to have its own NSF. So we have around 60 in our country. So, for example, the compliance here is that the NSF is expected to not just comply with the Olympic Charter and the Indian Olympic Association Charter, but also to its corresponding International Federation Charter. Okay, so it's bound by those rules and principles. And the NSF is also expected to comply with the government guidelines applicable to those sports federations. So, for example, if I take athletics, right, the Indian sports governing body would be Athletics Federation of India. Its corresponding international federation would be IAF. That's the World Athletics. Likewise, we'll pick football. The local Indian sports governing body is All India Football Federation, whereas FIFA is the equivalent, the international scene, and so on and so forth, right? So we have 60 such for each sport that is in India. And the responsibilities include promoting sport, managing sport, that particular sport that the NSF is representing. It also is responsible for organizing events. This could be national and international level, selecting national teams. Now, this is a very important responsibility that's given to the NSF, as well as trying to secure sponsorships and training sports administrators. And that's what we're talking about here. So this could be from your coaches to different administrators at the governance level as well, which is why it's very important that the NSFs at this point in time, unfortunately, though there are more than around 60, it's recognized by the sports ministry, but only three, I think this data maybe this is from last year, I think, but only three have a woman president. Only three of the 60 NSFs. And of course, as we all know, the Indian Olympic Association is headed by PT Usha, right, who's a former athlete. So I would like to hear from you, Vaidi, that knowing that currently the NSF's governance, yes, it's all over the place. We know that many things are on paper, but in what we see on the ground is quite different. But when it comes to the suggestions, as you mentioned, right, that women in sports is trying to kind of bring about, right? Could you just maybe at a high level give some of those that will be put forth?
Yeah, sure. I think what you said, the role of government and national federations, I think it encapsulated very well the importance of their work in sports and why they need to be the first one to have women at the right location, have right kind of female leadership at the top, because ultimately whatever they do is going to affect how the sports is developed, how women's sports is developed. And I think one of the greatest example that I can give you is Hockey India. We know for the longest time, for past 13 years, it was headed by a woman. She's no longer there, but she did a fantastic job, and we could actually see how well the sport was developed. In Olympics also, we can see how our teams performed, men, women both, and how well she emphasized on development of women's hockey. And we could see that when they were performing on ground. And I
You're
think,
referring to the Indian Hockey India CEO, Elena Norman?
yes, Elena Norman, she did really well with Hockey India, and I have spoken to her many, many times. She's one of the reasons why we started developing the equity toolkit in the first place. I think
All right,
I'll
nice.
give her
Okay.
that credit. But that's the importance of having a woman at the helm. You could see the difference between many other federations and Hockey India. They were doing some amazing. She was doing some amazing work. But just to come back to your question, what we are doing through this equity toolkit is, first thing we need to figure out is what are the barriers of entry,
Right.
because India lacks documentation. We don't, historically, retrospectively, we are not the kind of people who document everything. We don't collect data. Unfortunately, that's the fact. It's the way we are. Can't do anything. So we don't really have historic data to work with at this point to understand why women are not taking leadership positions, or what is it that is stopping them. So for us, we have to start there.
Are you referring to outside of the societal Vaidehi?
It could be all, inclusive. It could be social pressures, it could be our own inhibitions, it could be lack of awareness, it could be lack of understanding of how we go ahead, it could also be lack of mentorship or role models. So the first thing for us to actually gather data and figure out what are these prominent reasons for women not taking leadership positions, or what is the hindrance.
Right, right. So you're saying that data is not available as of now.
It's not. And
Mm.
what we are doing currently is all primary data. There is no secondary data available on women leadership in sports. Unfortunately, that's the fact. So a lot of our effort currently is going into talking to people, talking to women in leadership, figuring out what are the obstacles they faced. We are also talking to students. We are also talking to women who are in maybe mid management or senior management, to figure out why they are not taking the leadership roles. We are also talking to the recruiters or stakeholders of industry. Like, so for example, startups that are coming up rapidly in sports, we are talking to them. We are talking to teams, sports teams. We are talking to these media journalists. We are talking to private stakeholders like JSW, Reliance Foundation, Adani, and all these people, trying to figure out what is not working. I think that's first step. Once we know what's not working, then we will be able to figure out the solution which is practically implementable. We cannot be looking at this as a 1 year project or 2 year project. It's going to take a lot of time to actually implement this on ground. We have to give ourselves that time. So once we figure out the obstacles, once we figure out the barriers, then we will talk to all of these stakeholders again, saying that, hey, these are the barriers. What do you think could be solutions? Because it's not just me that can come up with the solutions. Every person, every stakeholder will have a different answer to that solution. So it has to be very tailor made. The solutions that will work for the federations will not probably work for the private stakeholders like JSW Sports or Reliance Foundation or so on and so forth. Same solutions may not work for the sports teams.
Mhm.
Same solutions may not work for the sports academies. So it has to be tailor made. But first things first, data collection. Unless we have enough data to figure out what is working, what is not working, we will not be able to come up with any solution. So for us, the current stage is data collection. We are doing that at present. We are setting up key stakeholder interviews with women who are already in the decision making positions, women who are developing to be in the decision making positions. We are also talking to national athletes who are transitioning or who have potential to transition into leadership positions. It's not just women who come with a business background or education background, is also about female athletes who
The
have the
natural leadership.
potential to
Right.
become the
Mm.
next leaders, and how can we make sure that they get that chance. So we are talking to all of these key stakeholders as well. Once the data is compiled, then we will work on the recommendations with the help of, again, everybody in sports. And then the idea is by end of December, we will come up with the first draft of this equity toolkit, which will fill the how. Like I said, how is always a problem. There could be a lot of policies that could dictate us to onboard a lot of women, but unless we know how to do it, it will become very difficult for anybody and everybody, even if they want to. A lot of people actually do want to get more women in the decision making positions, but it's just they don't know how. So we are working on how.
Wonderful. Just look forward to really December, because I think this is much needed, especially focused kind of effort in this, right? Because data is the first step, as you mentioned. Many times we know about cases around us, and since you mentioned about Alina Norman, and there's also culture involved here, right? They come from a different culture. Let me just give an example of, like, last year, the same thing. Last year we saw the resignation of the women's hockey coach, right? And this was. Janneke Schumann, she's from the Netherlands, worked in the US, and when she kind of was coaching our Indian hockey team, women's hockey team, she stated that our culture in India is quite different, and it's very difficult for women. I mean, she did state that the opinions that she gave were not valued. It was very hard to work in such an environment. And of course, she resigned shortly after, and then we had the hockey chief, Hockey India CEO Elena Norman also put down her papers, citing difficult working conditions. Right. So we know that people coming from a different culture, for them it might be more evident, it's more glaring, the defects of gender equity and other things in our country. But even for us, those of us who have lived in this culture, played in this ecosystem, we've sort of seen this sort of unravel firsthand. Right. Sometimes it's very subtle, but sometimes it's very evident. So these are the societal and the cultural barriers that we have, right? And this could be traditional gender roles. There's lack of family support, especially in more the patriarchal kind of families. In some states, that's very evident. And of course, the societal bias of often restricting women from exploring their full potential. And you touched upon that as well, right? When we look at this, right, could you kind of maybe give your thoughts on how media narratives, right, or public perception can shape opportunities for women in leadership positions within sports? Because if you just look at some of the adjectives that are used in media, right, to represent women, it could be things like she's a quiet achiever, she's punching above her weight. Many times the athlete's shape, looks, or appearance is given more preference than the actual skills, right? She might be spoken as of the underdog, or she has a very sportsman-like skill or play or whatever, right? So all these adjectives that are used in the media, right, and it's influence because it is a reflection of what society is also expecting, or what society is, in a way, right? So what are your thoughts, Devi?
One thing that I often think about when I look at media is women are more often than not portrayed as, victims of societal pressures, or their stories are exceptions. They're portrayed as exceptions. I don't think that's true, because every woman that I see around me is doing something amazing, and she's not an exception. She's doing that every day, and that's empowering. So I think from a media perspective, especially coming from a leadership standpoint, media should portray leaders as leaders, not as somebody who has struggled her way to the top. No, she has put in equal amount of effort to get where she is as a man. So portray her, ask her questions like you would to a male CEO, for example. Talk to her about her growth plans. Talk to her about, her solutions to creating a great business. Talk to her about her leadership styles. Don't talk to her about, oh, what challenges do you face as a woman? Don't talk to her that way, because I personally, as a female leader, do not want to talk about the challenges that I face every day. I want to talk about what new things I am doing, or what growth prospects I have for my company, right? So, media should portray women leaders as powerful human beings who have the ability to change the world. Something that probably Mary Kom does, maybe a young girl can do it every day. Then you are creating role models. And we need role models. We need them to be, on the Time magazine, for example, cover pages of Time magazine talking about, I believe India can be 100 crore sports capital. Let it come from a woman. Let her talk about stats. Let her talk about data. Let her talk about growth. Let her talk about finance. Talk to her about these things rather than asking her about the challenges. She already knows that there are challenges, but she's not thinking about them. She's thinking about, okay, going above and beyond these challenges, what am I going to do to contribute towards the growth of the society? Talk to her about that.
So we've noticed, and there's been some research done on this. Of course, this is a decade old, but this was done on the US population, and they found that this was done by EY and ESPN. they found that 94% of women in C-suite kind of positions, right, C-level positions, played sports at some point in their careers, and 52% at the collegiate level. And collegiate level in the US, of course, is a very high standard. So the influence that those who have played sports and their ability, because we know that with sports comes many other transferable skills, right? Many other soft skills, from everything from punctuality to discipline to kind of the motivation and the belief that one can overcome. And we are natural leaders as a result, because especially when you're playing, maybe let's say team sports, right, where you need to kind of lead the team. Could you tell me maybe from the economic, and you mentioned this also a little earlier too, right? From the economic kind of and the societal progress perspective, right? What are the benefits it has to the economy by and large, having more women leaders?
So I'm very bad with stats and remembering numbers, but I'll try and encapsulate what I mean as much as possible. So in one of the research I read that if you have a balanced team, if you have not equal, maybe not 50-50, but maybe 40-60, or even 30-70 representation, 30% women, 70% men, the efficiency of a team to work increases by 58%.
Hmm.
That's a huge percentage increase in the efficiency, which actually has an economic impact on the growth of the company. So we have to think for sports from that perspective also. Now, the issue currently that we are facing in general, and I'm generalizing for all stakeholders in sports, the female representation at a highest level ranges from 0 to 4%. That's very bad, right? That's very, very low. So
And we have
if you want,
50% of the population, right?
we do have 50% of the population and a lot of girls, and barring cricket, and now in cricket also we see a lot of women growing and becoming commercially
Hmm.
successful as well. So we see a lot of female role models in pretty much all sports. And you take any sport apart from cricket, the first name that will come up is a woman's name. So you take badminton, PV Sindhu comes up, right? Saina Nehwal comes up. You take boxing, Nikhil Zareen comes up, Mary Kom comes up. You take wrestling, the obvious names, right? So
Hmm.
you take any sport and a woman's name comes up. If that's the reality of on-field sport, it's not reflecting in off-field, correct? So
Right.
that has to happen in sports, for in general, for the economic growth of any federation or government body or any event for that matter. So if we can have more women at the leadership positions, I think the efficiency, the workability, the safety net that even the female athletes have at a top level, they know that somebody is going to be with them, stand with them, that increases. The performance of the athletes will increase. When the performance of the athlete will increase, it automatically will generate that much viewership, because people want to see winners, correct? So if the viewership increases, automatically the number of sponsors will come in. One of the examples, a very, very recent, actually this happened yesterday. So ICC women events will now have Rexona as their solo sponsor. So it's women specific sponsorship that came to ICC, which usually doesn't happen. When ICC has sponsorships, it goes to both male and female.
Extends to both.
But this time Rexona is going to only sponsors women events. So that's a natural transition because there is a viewership increase. So when the money comes in, imagine that, there is that amount of money in women's sports, automatically at a grassroots level, that many people will start playing that particular sport. Academies will pop up everywhere. We create a larger pool of players, and then from grassroots to top, that's how the economy works. The more people will invest in sports, the more commercially successful sports industry will become. So I think we are looking at women's sports as a charity. We should stop looking at it as a charity. Women's sports, from leadership to the ground level participation, should be looked at as a commercial investment opportunity, which will give you multifold economic benefit later on.
Right.
So
right.
we
And where
are
there's a demand.
correct.
Yes.
So we are essentially not, we are ignoring 50% of the profit, technically speaking. We are only looking at a 50% of the profit when we are only focusing on men's sports. Women's sports account for the other 50%. So we need to look at it, and that can only happen if women are at the leadership positions to take those
Absolutely.
relevant decisions, because they have gone through that. They have gone through the process of grilling at the ground level and coming to the top. So they know the potential that women's sports has. So, in a way, we need to look at women's sports as an opportunity rather than charity. And so far, we have
Absolutely.
been looking at it as a charity and not an economic benefit or advantage that an Indian sports ecosystem has, honestly. But that's something that I can encapsulate.
No, but this is great, Vaidhi. Unfortunately, we've sort of run out of time. Just two things I just wanted to add to what we've discussed, which we didn't cover, was when we're looking at the sort of barriers or challenges faced by women in leadership roles. It's also the work-life balance that we're looking at, because often women face that the dual challenge of managing their careers alongside disproportionate responsibilities at home, right? And we saw that also playing out during the pandemic. So I think this is something that should change.
For women's sports and for more women to be part of sports, we need that women at the top who can take the decision for other women and can support the growth of women's sports on field and off field. I think that's something that I really envision for India really well, because a lot of people currently working in sports are top notch. And if government is actually taking their decisions, their opinions, their advice, their suggestions in the account, and if they can implement those, I think we will have a good future for women's sports. And it's also our responsibility equally as citizens of India to do the best we can rather than cursing the government. We cannot have government do everything. It's also equally our responsibility to do these things.
Absolutely.
So I would encourage everybody in sports, every woman, honestly, who wants to do anything in sports, to take responsibility for her own life and make it happen, because we all know we have the ability, we know we are intelligent. So the onus is on us, honestly. So let's make it happen.
Let's make it happen, Vaidehi. I love that. Yes. Thanks, Vaidehi, once again for your time. And I'll just like to kind of just take a moment before we close to just mention that the applications are open for Takshashila's 48-week PGP program as well as the 12-week GCPP program. We also have a 3-week capsule course coming up from between the 12th and the 26th of April. This is focusing on women's sport. It's called Affecting Change, Transforming Women's Sport in India. And it's an opportunity to look at India's sports policy journey. And we'll have around 13 guest speakers who are coming in. They will kind of share their knowledge and ideas that we kind of see how we can improve the governance, involve the markets, and sort of transform society from being mere onlookers to kind of enablers of change. Right? So the link to this will be put in the show notes. And we just hope you can spread the word on that too. Right? Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Vaidehi.
If you liked our show, dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs. Check us out at our Twitter handle @TakshashilaINST or our website takshashila.org.in.